Right, good morning ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Staffordshire Leaders Board today, Thursday the 1st of December. We are being webcast this morning, and we've also got Kerry with us, our local democracy reporter, taking notes. Usually at meetings, Kerry live tweeting, which is wonderful for those of us who've got technology available to us. This is our meeting for the end of the year. The last time we sat together was in June. A few things happened between June and December. I don't know if anybody spotted it. A couple of changes of Prime Minister, even more changes of Chancellor. But here we are, still in local government, continuing to deliver on the behalf of our residents, despite the instability that we've observed in Westminster. This Leaders Board was set up to build on partnership work of all 9 councils, as importantly to maximise the opportunities for everyone who lives and works in this fantastic county. After turning the corner on COVID, few of us would have forecast very different challenges which started to emerge in 2022 and will extend into 2023. The economic turmoil and war in Ukraine has led to hardship on several fronts, both abroad and much closer to home. Turning to the cost of living. As leaders, we are acutely aware of the pressures many residents and businesses face in managing with the cost of living issues. Councils and all the partners and services we support are not immune to this either. In Staffordshire, together with the support of partners, we've launched our Here to Help campaign, signposting people to the support that is available, and I have to say we have had a fantastic response to this. These efforts are being mirrored in every single district and borough with tailored support from councils, the VCSE to meet local priorities, including discretionary housing payments, low-cost food stores, distribution of winter warm packs, and free slow cookers to those that are eligible, to name but a few. There are a huge amount of positive activities taking place in our communities, and it is another example of how Staffordshire works so well together to meet these challenges. Looking at one of the agenda items around single front door, anybody who needs to contact their local council for whatever reason would, I am sure, prefer a simple, speedy and efficient process to get to the information or advice they need. With 9 councils in Staffordshire, we want to make it as easy as possible for residents to contact the right service at the right time. That is why the Single Front Door programme is focusing on greater collaboration of customer services by exploring pilot activities such as a single customer service number or contact point, something which I think residents would appreciate and would also help to improve efficiency, and Councillor Eadie will be talking to that shortly. Around refugee and asylum seekers, our partnership work spans several areas from fairly straightforward to the complex and sensitive issues that we find around refugees and asylum seekers. In 2022, Staffordshire became the new home for scores of families fleeing war in Ukraine. And as a county, we've always played our part, welcoming those fleeing war and persecution. That commitment remains unbowed. This month, around 500 people from Ukraine will enjoy their first Staffordshire Christmas. We are all aware, too, of the challenges in supporting those asylum seekers in this country, both in ensuring the people get the support that they need and also local public services can cope, and that latter point is vital. Together with our members of Parliament, we continue to work with the Home Office and its partner, Serco, to press for meaningful engagement with local partners before accommodation is identified. It is this local knowledge which is, as always, key to a successful outcome. And you should rest assured that the leaders of the districts and boroughs, and indeed the County Council here, are acutely aware of the pressures that this is creating across the county of Staffordshire. Turning to climate change and sustainability, while the cost of living pressures may dominate headlines, COP27 was a timely reminder of the importance of our climate change commitments. At our first formal meeting, we made sustainability one of our 6 key priorities. Although less than 2% of Staffordshire's annual carbon footprint is produced by public sector emissions, we recognise the huge influence our collaborative efforts can make. The establishment of the Staffordshire Sustainability Board in January 2022 to enable and facilitate change wherever possible throughout the geographic area of Staffordshire as a whole remains key to this, and we will hear more detail of its progress later on in the agenda. As 2022 comes to a close, I would like to say that despite the challenges which remain, Staffordshire has a hugely positive story to tell. This board is focused on championing the county with national government, attracting investment and growing the local economy, and working together resourcefully and flexibly to make a positive difference to people's lives. The Staffordshire-wide Visitor Economy Action Plan is a prime example of this. It sees both public and private sectors are working together to build on our wider We Are Staffordshire Place branding work to strengthen the profile of Staffordshire nationally and internationally. The plan focuses where collective Staffordshire-wide efforts can add the greatest value by acting together with a united Staffordshire voice, maximising the opportunity to reap even greater economic rewards. So before we turn to the agenda today, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to say thank you for the huge efforts being made by residents, businesses and partners to deliver for Staffordshire in its constituent districts and boroughs. And we look forward to building on this success in 2023. So I'll now turn to the agenda, and just as I say that, my computer has died. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from County Councillor Doug Pullen, Councillor Patrick Farrington and Councillor Jeremy Oates.
And standing in for those people are Councillor Jeremy Pert, Councillor Ian Eadie and Councillor Rob Pritchard. So we have political representation from across the county. Any other apologies? The minutes of the previous meeting?
One action to bring to attention and just to cover off. At the last Leaders Board, the board approved the terms of reference. By way of update, that has been through, or the majority of districts and boroughs now have signed those terms of reference off. Since that last meeting, there has been one minor change to the terms of reference, which is at paragraph 10.1. Where it reads, rather than the Leaders Board meeting at least quarterly, this has now been changed to read, the Leaders Board will meet no less than every 4 months. This means that following the new approach, a formal meeting of the Leaders Board will fall every 4 months. Thank you, Chair.
Everybody content with that? Everybody content with the minutes as a whole? Yep. Okay, thank you. Moving on then to the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 4 is the Chair's update. Now, because my computer died, I did the Chair's update to get started with, so I think we'll just skip over that one, unless anybody wants to hear it again. That'll be a no. Agenda item number 5 is single front door. Councillor Eadie, I know that you've got an update for us, and I know that Kerry Dove has also got some supplementary information if necessary. Councillor Eadie, we were with you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, leaders. You have all had the opportunity, I'm sure, to read the paper that is part of our pack today. What I wanted to do is just try and share with you a little bit more in terms of some of the deliverables that are needed to bring this forward, and therefore hopefully to give you a little bit more information. In terms of the target operating model, this is certainly with one of our assistant directors in Lichfield District Council. We would expect to have this in a position to be able to share within the next 2 to 3 weeks, so early January. In terms of the 3 pilots that are detailed in your paper, just to give you a little bit of information, in terms of, Chair, as you mentioned, a single phone number, we know that for our residents, they don't see a distinction between the County Council, the district and boroughs, and where parishes exist, those as well. So in terms of bringing the single phone number forward, what I understand is obviously we would be looking for Lichfield District Council and Staffordshire County Council being the pilots to be sharing a common phone system, which I believe is something that will be looked at obviously over the course of the timescale that we've got set out for us. In terms of moving forward on the customer satisfaction measurement tool, I understand the County Council already uses GovMetrics. This would be one for Lichfield District Council to move to a similar system to be able to share across that platform. So therefore, the one that perhaps is the most immediate that we can look at improving upon is the online sound posting and comms, because in essence that isn't reliant on systems, it's just reliant on goodwill and partnership working. So certainly in the sense of it, in terms of moving those 3 pilots forward, we've identified what is necessary, we can see what we need to do, and the action is underway at the moment, as I say, in terms of the structure, in terms of key roles and responsibilities, and we'd expect to have those in place the end of this month, beginning of January, to be able to move it forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eadie. Kerry, anything to add to that?
Just to reassure the board that, as we've previously discussed here, the County Council and Lichfield District Council are working as the early adopters of the model, but throughout the process of those pilots, there'll be opportunities for other district and boroughs to come on board. We are working at pace to establish those pilots and further test the model. Most importantly, we're really looking to make sure that those pilots have a tangible impact on improving resident experience. Further work is underway to develop that detail around that target operating model, and we will make sure that we bring forward progress updates and the impacts of those pilots through to both the Chief Execs Group and Leaders Board as the work progresses. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Eadie summed it up quite nicely with the fact that residents across all our areas just look at the council. They don't distinguish between the district or the borough or the county. They just think about the council. And I think we'll see how this pilot works. I'm going to be quite intrigued to see how it pans out. Are there any other comments from members of the board? The recommendation that Ian has here is that it's recommended that the Leaders Board note the progress of the Single Front Door programme as detailed in this paper. It has been duly noted. There are no additional comments. Councillor Eadie, are you content? Yep. Right. Thank you for that, and thank you for the update. Moving on then to agenda item number 6, which is climate change and sustainability. Councillor Tagg, a good news story.
Yes, Chair. I think, as you said in your introduction, the challenges of climate change are well known. And local authorities across Staffordshire districts and boroughs have come together to coordinate our approach to this. You said at the beginning about the 2% of carbon emissions come from local authorities working together to reduce those to zeros by the timescales which cabinets across the county have agreed. Some of those are different, but for example, the county is 2050, whereas, for example, Newcastle Borough as a council is 2030. But we also have got an eye on the other 98% of carbon emissions. That comes from everything else that happens across the county, whether that's business operations, residential properties, transport, and all sectors. And we have a role to play in helping to reduce those and also using the levers we have as local authorities to help to reduce those. So we've come together around 10 pledges, and one of those is that we all report on the same baseline, so we know where we start from. And that's in place now and monitored across the Sustainability Board on a quarterly basis. We've also agreed to harmonise on green energy and energy reduction policies and set some dates on that for where we wish to get to those, the points we want to get to on those. And also to move our fleets, every council, whether the district or county, operate a fleet of vehicles and to move them to low carbon fuels as soon as we can, and there are some dates attached to that as well. And also on the waste and recycling agenda to obviously reduce waste, which is a large part of our carbon emissions through our the way we manage recycling and general waste across the county. And also to take a leadership role and an ambassadorial role as councils and as councillors within those councils to ensure that we get the message out there in our community. There are a lot of community groups across the county that are interested in climate change, and we must have their voice fed in as well into the decisions which we make as we aim for net zero on the timescales which we've decided upon. And then, as I said earlier, there's a monitoring process on this to ensure that we are meeting the commitments that we have made on climate change. So some of the successes in the first year, and we are in the first year of the Sustainability Board, as you said, Alan, earlier, is that we've looking at the planning system, and we've set a goal of reaching net zero for planning. And we've got a work stream involving all of the districts and planning officers across the districts, and it is a thread of this Leaders Board to achieve that, to harmonise our approach to net zero across the county and to bring that in a reasonable timescale that we can achieve, so that no new houses are built across Staffordshire that aren't already net zero and then have to be retrofitted at a later date. And also a drive towards ensuring we have the take-up of electric vehicles in the county, and a strategy has been put together which will put local authorities at the heart of enabling the rollout of electric vehicles, but we won't be delivering to ourselves. What we'll be doing is enabling the conditions for businesses to come in and put them into, whether it's council car parks, whether it's in on county buildings or wherever, so we can get those electric charging points in place. We've also agreed a joint communication strategy, because a large part of the climate change agenda, particularly for that other 98%, is behavioural change and changing people's attitudes to the way they live their lives in the light of the need to reduce carbon emissions to tackle climate change. And we've got a full work programme going forward, which is including looking at nature recovery, which is another key strand of the sustainability agenda. And, of course, the Environment Act that was passed at the end of 2021 puts a lot of responsibility on local authority for biodiversity and protecting nature and the recovery of nature. So we have plans that we're moving forward on that. And lastly, Chair, I'd just like to say that, again, touching on that leadership role that we have, all councils around this table, districts and borough, declared a climate emergency in 2019, and part of that was that we would take that leadership role. I think through the Sustainability Board and through our cabinet members across the county and leaders around this table, we are doing that, working with partners such as our local universities, community groups, the health sector, which has a net zero policy in place now, to deliver that for the whole of Staffordshire. And of course, the county's target is 2050, that we will be net zero. Other districts have slight changes on that. But that overall target for net zero by 2050, plans are in place. The Sustainability Board will help to deliver that, and we will play that leadership role to ensure that we reach that for all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Just seeking a few comments from the board. Councillor Pritchard, your local residents, do they sort of pick up on the leadership role that the Tamworth Borough Council is playing on the climate change thing, or are they doing their own thing in any event? What do you observe?
I'd say it's a bit of both. The authority is doing what it can. We're putting some policy change into our budget to deliver our part of that, but there is a distinct drive from ordinary residents, but there's also a lot of political pressure from residents as well, and some, should we say, pressure groups pushing the authority too.
I'll come on to Councillor Lyons in a second, because she's got the T-shirt for pressure groups, I think. But Councillor Eady, you also hold the development portfolio holder at LDC, and some of the aspects of this that were referred to in the building standards that are required. Have you been able to create supplementary planning documents and associated weave into your local plan the climate change agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Very much a work in progress. Obviously, our local plan is going through, and we're hopeful to get to public examination, subject to staffing levels within the next 9 to 12 months. So SPDs normally flow off the back of your local plan. So to a certain extent, we will certainly be looking to bring this forward. I know it's something that everybody in the community is passionate about. And I think as important, obviously, to this is making sure that we see beautiful homes and that there isn't a compromise, because most residents turn around and say, we don't like development, we don't like, obviously, just boxes going up that are inefficient. Reference was made earlier on, so that we avoid, obviously, having to retrofit them. So certainly in terms of the commitments that this Leaders Board has made, Lichfield District Council recognises it, and we will play our part in weaving it into our commitments going forward.
Yeah, the timing of your local plan in relation to this is perfect, really, because it's you're able to evolve it as these documents are emerging, and also recognise the desire of residents to have those beautiful homes to live in that are efficient.
Indeed, Chair.
Councillor Lyons, you've got certainly quite a lot of pressure having the area of outstanding national beauty in your slap bang in the centre of your district. Does the points Councillor Tagg made play to the pressure that you're receiving?
Yes, absolutely, Chair. I think we, as an organisation, have been working quite closely with stakeholders. We also, Councillor Pritchard touched upon the influence of community groups. We have zero carbon rouge within the district, which is we've been engaging quite heavily with them. In fact, we have an upcoming meeting this Saturday. And then more widely, we've just had a costed action plan. We've got the results of that coming through at the minute, and that looks at our organisational target and some of the actions that Councillor Tagg outlined there, but then also setting up a stakeholder group to work with in terms of our wider influence amongst the community.
Of course, the climate change agenda has real-world effects across the county. For Councillor Allen, for example, the River Trent flooding in your town is a real issue that happens on a frequent basis, and so I think the work that we're doing on the climate change will go to mitigate some of these the worst effects that we're discussing or we're aware of. as part of this report. Is there anything you'd like to say, Councillor Allen, before I ask Councillor Tagg to come back and close it off?
Yeah, of course, that's the main driver to this, reducing the effects of climate change. But there's some really basic, obvious benefits to this. Reducing the cost to the taxpayer in terms of energy costs is obviously a really good thing. And living and working in a clean environment with less vehicles polluting is also a really good thing. But those are all important bits, as well as reducing the impact of climate change.
Thank you. Any other of the leaders want to add into this? Councillor Pert.
Thank you. I wanted to just pick up two things. Stafford Borough Council is in the middle of refreshing its local plan and is currently out for consultation on that. But as part of that, we've gone and are one of the first 10 authorities in the country, the first 10 planning authorities in the country, to go with a commitment for net zero housing. So every house that it will be built will be net zero, which is what Councillor Tagg referred to. And I think that's a really bold statement, because otherwise what we're asking residents to do is the moment they buy a new house and put the key in the front door, they've got a liability that they haven't recognised in terms of retrofit if those houses aren't carbon neutral. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I'd say is there is huge amounts of brilliant things that are being done through our communities that, quite frankly, we don't often see. So, for example, Trentham Estates have planted 10,000 trees as part of their commitment to climate change. And often we talk about the imperative of climate change, and if we can persuade everyone to do their bit, then I think we've got an opportunity to make that difference. And the other example I'd use is that Norbury Park is a location where the Cabinet went to at Stafford Borough last week, and they've planted 436,000 trees. And quite often they're using that as a research centre to be able to see what the impact of climate change is, by planting mixed woods, by coppicing, by planting mixed lays. And there is lots of latent knowledge that we all have to share and bring the passion and energy to this debate. The other site next door to Norbury Park, which is part of a £15 million investment, is at Byford's Face, which is a research centre with Birmingham University. And they are one of only 2 sites in the country which is looking at accelerating the impacts of climate change and measuring what the impacts on trees, for example, is. So there are some great things going on, and actually we should celebrate some of the things more regularly that is going on. But otherwise, I welcome where we're at. Thank you.
Impressive numbers. 436,000. Wow. Councillor Tagg, you've heard comments from members of the board.
Thank you, Alan. I think as we've seen from going around the table, there's a lot going on and a lot of good work going on towards our goals for net zero. And I think coordinating all that through the board which we've set up, Staffordshire Sustainable Board, is the key to enabling that good practice also to be learned across the board, because some districts are way ahead of others, and we can all learn and catch up to reach our goal. And that's one of the main sort of thrusts really of the board we've set up. From a Newcastle Borough Council point of view, as I'm sitting here as the leader of Newcastle, I think we've sort of taken grasped the nettle on the sustainable environment issues over the last 18 months or so. And we're also doing really well on our recycling and waste service, and we're actually, I believe this afternoon, up for an award at the APSE Performance Network for most improved waste and recycling service in the country. So we've been shortlisted for that, so fingers crossed for our teams in Newcastle who've put a lot of work into improving the system, massively increasing our rates of recycling. And we already collect food waste and have done since 2009, and we're obviously looking to help the other districts as they have to move towards food waste, which is one of the government requirements coming down the line. And we've been doing it very successfully since 2009. And as I say, fingers crossed for the award this afternoon. And I think all districts are doing brilliant work on this. I think they're also working with their communities and those community groups that are popping up. I think that's really key to have their voice heard. And they can also go out and be the advocates and communicate some of the proposals that we are putting forward, because as just been outlined by colleague next to me, there's a lot of things that people is going to change in people's lives because of the gender, and we have a role of ensuring that we give people the right messages and also the right advice to move forward, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's retrofitting, whether it's you know, looking after their local environment and green spaces, and planting trees for the carbon offset. And just lastly, before I finish, we are celebrating in our borough next year the 850th year since we received our first charter from Henry II, and we are planting 850 lime trees on one of our green spaces to recreate the lime forest that gave Newcastle under Lyme part of its name originally. So named after the forests of limes that used to dominate North Staffordshire and South Cheshire. But we're using that as a way to push the green agenda, planting trees, carbon offset. Thank you.
That's wonderful, and I do hope that people, our residents, pick up on how much work we are doing as local authorities across the county of Staffordshire to support the climate change agenda, and a tremendous amount going on from responding to our residents' concerns, as Councillor Pritchard pointed out, making sure our future local plans reflect climate change imperatives, as Councillor Eadie pointed out, and planting trees, as Councillor Pert pointed out, which is just mind-boggling that number of trees is going in the ground. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Tagg. We'll move on to agenda item number 7. Now, the cost of living is something that we are all acutely aware of, and I thought that for this meeting it would be a little tin-eared of us if we didn't reflect on the cost of living challenges that our residents are facing. And I just wanted to touch on what the districts and boroughs are doing around the county to support those people who are struggling with the cost of living. You've got the paper in front of you, and I just wanted to start off by going round the table, really, highlighting the work of each of our districts and boroughs. Cannock, Councillor Lyons, you've got providing support online for residents to help with the cost of living. Is there anything you'd like to say about that before I move on to East Staffs?
Thank you, Chair. So we've developed a network of the support so we can help to signpost residents. We've been working with different community groups within the district on initiatives such as community shops. We've also developed a network of anchor organisations as an umbrella to sort of work, so community groups and volunteer organisations can work collaboratively and collectively in the district, and that's something actually that we've built on following COVID-19. So there is a lot going on, a lot of support available, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you've got energy tax rebates, a COVID-19 additional relief fund for VCSE groups and other things going on in your borough?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yes, we have. We've also started doing warm spaces as well, which I know lots of other districts have started to do. We're providing funding, making not just our own spaces available, also providing funding for other people to open up their spaces, paying for that energy cost, because you put the radiator on, it costs money. I'm quite particularly interested in Lichfield's more liberal approach to tax reductions and discounts for struggling families, and I know we want to be looking at that. Also interested in Newcastle's warm packs as well. We are about to go live. I think this is a first public thing. This might be a first public announcement. We're about to go live on direct support for food banks. It'll be a trial on a small scale to start with, and we're looking to put that into the next budget for next year, covering a 2-year period to help people through the cost of living crisis, but quite interested in what some of the work that other districts are doing. Hope we can expand what we're doing and sort of work and copy each other, so to speak.
It's called best practice, Councillor Allen. We're trying to avoid the word copying, I think. Councillor Eadie, you've opened up the District Council House as a warm space. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, obviously our council house is open, but as the paper notes, as are many other organisations such as Lichfield Cathedral, indeed, and I would recognise Burntwood Town Council's support as well in doing this, in just obviously recognising that people need a place that they can go to for a little bit of shelter and a little bit of warmth if they're struggling to heat their home. So very much, again, you know, for me, one of the key things that I know I've been pushing my Cabinet colleagues on, and as Councillor Allen has mentioned, is looking at the local council tax support scheme. We know that many residents are struggling to pay their bills now. One of them that's obviously significant each year for them is their council tax. We're very, very keen, therefore, to see what we can do that changes the current one, that is a pan-Staffordshire scheme, so that in reality we don't ourselves put people into debt, and we look to see where we can alleviate some of that for them. So going forward, obviously, we lighten the burden, not add to it.
Councillor Tagg, in Newcastle, you're buying electric blankets.
We are, and making sure they get to the people that need them. I think those warm packs, as already been mentioned, are crucial to people that are obviously not turning on their heating or turning it down. And obviously now the weather has changed over the last week. That will become even more of an importance. I think we, further to that, we've, even though the link there is not the one which we've now set up, we have a dedicated section on our website for cost of living advice. I think in touching on what all colleagues have said, making sure that people are aware of those council tax discounts that are available and make sure that they get them. And, you know, the take-up of them is really crucial, and information about them being disseminated in the community. So we've asked our local members, councillors, to promote it in their wards, and we're producing a flyer that they can put into community centres, etc. Also, our Castle House Council HQ, which has got the County Council's library, and it is open as a warm space in the library, encouraging people to come in. And also, we've got some funding to have some of those out in our communities and our community centres, warm spaces, over the winter period. So we're doing quite a lot of what other people are doing, but I think it's a really important time of year, particularly as we get into the winter weather now, to help as many people as possible who are struggling to heat their homes because of the cost.
And over in South Staffordshire, Councillor Leese, the Communities Are the Best Medicine grant programme, which sounds outstanding.
Thank you, Chair. We've launched a fund which is called the Community is the Best Medicine Fund, which here in South Staffordshire, we produced a cost of living document providing advice and information for residents. Increased costs this year are leaving many people across our communities with additional cost burdens that may prove to be extremely challenging, leading to increased health and well-being issues, as has been stated already. South Staffordshire Council, in partnership with the Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust and Staffordshire Community Foundation, have provided a pooled budget to facilitate additional support to many of our residents who have never needed support before. We utilise the data and intelligence gained from local community plus working, to identify the areas of need, and are working with parishes and community groups in the local to target extra funding. The funding would be utilised for a variety of purposes, including to support and promote a provision of network of warm and welcome spaces for any of in our communities to go to on a regular basis. Visitors to these locations will be able to receive a friendly welcome, someone to talk to and be listened to whilst having a warm drink and food. And I think that covers the points that we've made.
Yeah, somebody to talk to is we sometimes forget how important that is in people's welfare, and it's absolutely wonderful to hear that that's going on as part of your package. Over in Stafford, we've got food distribution hub.
Thank you. Yes, the Borough Council has put in some money to set up a food distribution hub to support some of the brilliant work that's being done in our communities by the food banks. But we've also been, for a long, long time, providing lots of energy efficiency advice, as well as energy efficiency measures. And that's something we've ramped up as well quite significantly. But in terms of the warm spaces that South Staffs were talking about, that Councillor Lees was talking about, one of the things that we're doing on top of the 28 or so warm spaces that we've got up and running is providing some information, advice and guidance to some of those volunteers. So if they want to have some of those difficult conversations about people who are concerned about housing and need housing advice, or concerned about budgeting and would like some money advice, or alternatively, we recognise there'll be people who are navigating our systems who have never done this before, never felt they needed to do this before, and it's quite daunting for people. So actually providing a range of webinars for those people, for those volunteers, and I thank each and every one of them, I think is going to be quite useful. And to pick up loneliness and isolation point, I think it's absolutely right. There'll be people who are locked in today who don't need to be locked in as a throwback from COVID, and offering people an opportunity to go back and re-establish some of the lives that they had pre-COVID, I think is a really good opportunity.
Thank you. And up in the Moorlands, you've got a fuel bank scheme, which sounds quite intriguing.
Yeah, we've just started the creation of a fuel bank scheme to support families and work with North Staff Financial Inclusion Group. We've also just set up a little working group so that the councillors can sort of help to direct people to the correct procedures and everything, and also to financial help to small groups like your churches, your village halls and places like that who are finding costs going up. We've also started now to get a leaflet out to local people to direct them in the right direction where they can get financial help with the food bank and everything else.
Thank you. And then over to Tamworth. With the 2,000 to 3,000 slow cookers being distributed, presumably through Community Together CIC, that is run by former County Councillor Lee Bates, who you and I both know very well, both now and in the past.
Yes, sir, thank you. Yeah. So I think it's worth praising some of the wonderful voluntary groups we've got in Tamworth who we're very happy to work with. Some of them are highly professionalised. I'm sure the input of Lee Bates helps that because he's very, very passionate. And there's some other groups as well in Tamworth which have been, we're proud to support, this Tamworth Pantry and Heart of Tamworth, and they're really local groups that are helping people with difficulty. They provide advice, support. The Community Together CRC even has a befriending service, and that really does make a difference to vulnerable people who do need help. On top of that, so we're helping to distribute the slow cookers and working to help secure more of those. We're operating our warm space in the assembly rooms to allow people who might be struggling a little bit with the heat. We're working to distribute an information leaflet which has a huge amount of signposting for people because often the help is there, they just are not sure where to go, so it's about making sure people know where to go. And one thing we're very proud of in Tamworth is our free outdoor events, because actually it provides a free family day out for people, and we'll continue to invest in that programme.
For members that aren't aware, Tamworth's one of the few areas across the county that isn't parished. And that means that the community work that goes on and the dedicated community volunteers that support the work of the Borough Council is absolutely critical to everything that you do. And I'm aware of some of that work, only some of it, but it's absolutely fantastic to see that you're able to call on that at this time in order to continue to support those, or to help more those vulnerable families suffering with the cost of living. So you can see that across the county there's a lot going on around districts, boroughs and ourselves. The County Council is running a Here to Help campaign, the details of which are contained within the pack, and there's a link to it. I thought it was important at this meeting just to highlight the work that's going on across Staffordshire to make sure that districts and boroughs are able to share ideas. There are some ideas that only really apply in some areas and less so in others. I've just referred to the fact that Tamworth isn't parished, so therefore they've got a different model of getting help out, but it's as effective as anything else that we have around the county. And there's some ideas here that you might consider, what was the word, Councillor Allen, copying? Sharing best practice across the county so that we do the best by the residents that we represent. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had the opportunity to have a discussion of the cost of living. Thank you very much indeed for your contributions. There's a piece here which recommends the establishing of an officer group to ensure partners continue to collaborate locally where appropriate, as well as ensuring residents are signposted to all relevant support and guidance. I think, based on the conversation we've had, that will be unanimously supported unless anybody indicates contrary. No. In that case, we'll move forward with that recommendation and move on to the next agenda item. The final item on the agenda for this morning, forgive me, I'll just get to my agenda here, is the Visitor Economy Action Plan, which you've got in front of you. Now, we've got with us for this part of the meeting Anthony Hodge, John Vining and Charlotte Kane. Anthony, are you going to be giving us an introduction to this for the formal meeting, please? Yep.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll hand over to Charlotte in a moment, but if I may just introduce this item. The visitor economy is worth a significant amount of money to the county, approaching £2 billion. It also employs an awful lot of people, circa 33,000 jobs. So it is important, and interestingly, it does link much to what you were talking about earlier in terms of what we're trying to achieve through the Visitor Economy Action Plan. The action plan is designed to sit cheek by jowl with your local strategies to support economic growth and development. It's designed to amplify and enhance those and to provide added value. And it's also been prepared very closely with the private sector and through public consultation to make sure that there's a real buy-in and collaboration around what we're trying to do. The key aims and deliverables of the plan are to make a strong contribution towards economic growth, to make a strong contribution to achieving net carbon zero, and also to improve life for Staffordshire's communities, which is all part about the jobs and people having more spent in their pockets who work within that particular sector. What I'd like to do, Chairman, if it's okay with you, is to pass over to Charlotte to talk in more detail about the Visitor Economy Action Plan and what the nuts and bolts are.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Ms. Kane, could you take us away, please?
Thank you, Chair and Leaders. The Visitor Economy Plan focuses on what we're best doing together as a county. While the main aim is traditionally to increase visitor numbers so that they stay longer and spend more and return to our county, packaging up our fantastic collective offer. It's fair to say that during the pandemic we also saw the importance of our local community participating. This is a sector very large to the County Council, which is also a sector that can spin and pivot very quickly to respond to the needs of our communities. We've already mentioned today Lichfield Cathedral being a warm place, the National Forest helping to plant trees to help with climate mitigation. And the plan tries very effectively to link a lot of different council services and as well as our product and opportunities together to focus our efforts as to how we will not only raise our visitor numbers and the economic impact of that, but how we'll stand the test of time to overcome some of those challenges. Within the plan, there is a target to build back our pre-pandemic visitor number and value, our visitor economic value to 1.87 billion. However, we are in a changing time with the economy at the moment, and our inflation level at the moment stands at 10%. We've commissioned a large-scale report which will come through in the spring of 2023, which will help us to reset the benchmark of where we need to be and put an additional stretch target in for our visitor value and numbers into each of the areas that the county covers. So we will be reviewing that stretch target in the spring in line with inflation and product development. The priorities within the plan align directly to the Leaders Board's aims and objectives around strengthening our partnerships both within the county and across our borders. We've been talking to the likes of Derbyshire, Cheshire, Shropshire and Dudley, and even as far as people like in Preston where our train lines link. We're looking to package up our product. We've run workshops with your officers and our operators. We'll be bringing forward at least 8 itineraries which visitors and locals can engage with. And we've also been running campaigns such as a under £30 campaign to tackle the cost of living. Product development is a key driver within this plan around bed space for visitors, but also for locals who need that for their residents. And we'll be working very closely with our planning teams and our inward investment teams to understand how we can better increase the bed space within the county, not necessarily through large-scale hotel investments, but it may be as simple as tracking where future EV points would help with additional bed space in pubs and B&Bs. Business support and skills will be working with the brokerage service to make sure that our sector is fully represented within that platform and trying to increase job opportunities for local people within the sector. And we'll be looking at making sure that our sector is fully accessible and inclusive. Climate change is a thread that runs through the entirety of the plan around mitigation, but also how we manage visitors sympathetically to the needs of our residents. So all of this really does link sit very nicely with the inward investment and our overall place agenda and the quality of life for both for our local residents as well. So the recommendations within the plan are to ask for your continued support. We've already had a fantastic response from your officers to date to get us to the point we've got a plan, but to keep going on this journey so that Staffordshire can also go on to secure a local visitor economy action partnership.
Thank you very much indeed. If you could just turn your microphone off. Thank you. It's the scale of the visitor economy which is mind-boggling. 33,000 people, many of whom are young people who perhaps are looking for a summer job in, say, Drayton Manor Park and other places, getting their first foot on the ladder of work experience. My daughter did a stint, she went to Rawlett School, did a stint at Drayton Manor Park in the summer one year. And the fact that the cross-border nature of our relationships is something that we all recognise, and our residents don't get sort of hung up about the fact that Drayton Manor Park happens to be in Lichfield District, but it's adjacent to Tamworth. Our residents don't get hung up about the fact that the Peak District is partly mostly in Staffordshire, but also in Derbyshire. So this thing, when you bring it together, you can see that the opportunities for collaboration and presenting ourselves as one united entity, the districts, boroughs and the county, creates a compelling case in government to take this thing forward. Does anybody have any comments about the visitor economy action plan that you've seen in front of you? No? Okay, so there are 5 recommendations for us here this morning. First of all is to note and support the draft visitor economy action plan. Second, to note the emerging priority themes, including that accommodation will be the focus of future product development and support future growth. Third, note the vision and list of priorities within the plan and provide associated feedback. Fourth, to support a longer-term commitment to collaboration and funding for the Destination Management Partnership with a view to securing national accreditation with Visit England and the Department of Culture, Media and Sport working as a collective through our Destination Management Partnership. And finally, request the Economic Growth Directors Group prioritise the sharing of information relating to the destination management projects to support the success of the partnership. We are a county of national attractions. National Memorial Arboretum in Councillor Eadie's patch, Alton Towers, Peak National Park, Cannock Chase, area of outstanding national beauty, the National Football Centre in Burton-upon-Trent. We are truly a place where people want to come and visit. Collectively, if we can get this offer together, pitch it to government, we can attract funding to make it even more attractive than it is already. So I would ask you to support this. I'd also like to thank Charlotte and the officers for the work that they've done. Charlotte does a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to bring this thing forward. So they are the recommendations, ladies and gentlemen. Is everybody in favour of the recommendations? Yep. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So just go back to my agenda. Bang. There we go. Right. There are no items on the agenda which are excluded items. So therefore, with that, ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is concluded. Thank you very much indeed.